that. And we'd all play. I mean, like, again, it was never my intention to chase anyone away. And I didn't think that I would. I didn't think it was possible. That's how I had it in my head of why I was so rough. Because I'm like, these guys aren't going to go anywhere. They want to play, but again, everybody's different. And there might have been some people that I chased away at that time or whatever. And I guess maybe the old me or something, or maybe even now, like, thinks just like, oh, well, then I weeded them out, because they didn't really want to do it anyways. But that's not necessarily true. It just could have been like, they just could have made use of a different coaching style,
Absolute Guard podcast.
This is episode 29. My name is Benny, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host John, who I'll need to hit up about some hitbox tricks since I just got a snackbox micro.
You did? Oh, that's crazy! Did you order it online, or did it just get in, or what?
Yeah, I just got it yesterday. So
nice. Is it one of those special? Like, I remember it being at Evo, and the Evo hitbox or the Evo snack box like sold out right away. But there's like a bunch of other like little cool looking ones, right? Or like unique art and like random different keycap colors and stuff like that.
No, I just got like the super cheap like base one. Like they just released that. This is like the newest one that they just released. That's just PC and Switch. So it cut down the cost to like 165. So I was just like, at that price point, like I'll go ahead and get in because I wanted something like portable to bring around.
Wow.
And besides the stick. So I was like, for that I was just like, I'm in.
That's awesome. I had a friend who like literally like an hour ago, he messaged me and was like, hey, hitboxes have gone up in price. Like, what the hell? And so it's interesting to hear that the mix box is way cheaper. So, or not mix box, the snack box is way cheaper. So I will forward that on to him. That's awesome.
Yeah, they got a lot of different variants. Like, depending on which, they have like the 2022 variant that's a little bit cheaper if you didn't want whatever like the newest one has. It has the PS5 and like the new Xbox and stuff like that. So there's options out there for you that are be a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, and that's really good because a lot of people like to dip their toes in the water with leverless, right? Because it's so foreign, and so the cheaper you go, the easier it is to start into it, I think.
Yeah. So, cool. So after this past weekend, you had a little gathering at the Contender Esports in Gilbert. Was that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was Street Fighter PC Day, and that contributes to a greater narrative about like, where a local's going to land when Street Fighter 6 drops. Is online going to take over? What happens to the offline casuals and whatnot? And one of the big debates was around, the fact that going to like a play on console at a gaming shop or play in a tournament in a major, could be actually a lesser experience than playing at home on an optimized PC with a high refresh rate monitor and everything. And so we wanted to try to marry the best of both worlds there and basically have high quality, high fidelity, high refresh PC gaming and fighting game experience at Contender Esports at Gilbert this past weekend. So a decent turnout. We played a lot of different Street Fighters. There's a Street Fighter 5 tournament that happened. They had one weekly. There was a lot of discussion about Street Fighter 6. We saw some some Marvel guys showed up. They played some Marvel too. So nice. Pretty good time. Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. So who do we have on the show today?
So today is going to be my good friend said3s. I've known him for nearly my entirety of my fighting game community career, and we've gotten pretty close over the years. He and I have a rapport around a movie list that I have not, like, I've not seen a lot of classic movies, and he'll just give me shit constantly about not seeing movies. And over time, we worked our way through some of those movies. Like, I got to see Leon the Professional, and I got to see some movie with a number in it about the 7 deadly sins. Oh, it's called Seven. Okay, anyway, I'm turning on it. Let me bring Abe on here. So, what's up, Abe?
How's it going, everybody? How are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Yeah, I remember. I still have it in my phone. It's in my like notepad or something like that. It's literally called the Johns and Asshole list.
Johns and Asshole list. That's what it was.
Literally what it's called, with myriad of titles that I checked in with him and asked, like, have you seen this? No. Have you seen this? No. All right, well, let me add it to the list because we're gonna because we roomed together for, man,
it's probably a year, right? It had to be.
I think it was like a year. And so I showed him a few movies or whatever. I didn't really know till the end of our time together at that when we were living together, but yeah, got to show him some movies and stuff. So, but yeah, I still have that somewhere in my phone saved somewhere. I still have that.
And I kind of glossed over on the intro as far as like why he's my friend, but more so like Abe is also on here for the his contributions to the Arizona fighting game community. He's a tournament organizer. He's a top player. He's a community leader. He's a content creator too. He's got his own YouTube channel. We've actually got some footage up on the stream right now of an organized event that he and I both did during the pandemic called Desert Duels. And yeah, we worked together on quite a number of different events too. So, but we could go pretty much anywhere and everywhere on this podcast episode because you've kind of done it all in the same way that we had Ryan Karlovsky on recently. Similar thing. Top player, content creator, TO.
Yeah, he's done it. He's more on the anime side, which I think the lines feel a little blurred now because I feel like there's a lot more crossover in games. As far as those genres are concerned. I mean, hell, I was playing Grand Blue when it came out or whatever, and I know it's not the typical Guilty Gear or whatever sort of thing, but it still is an anime game, and I delved into that. Ryan's played Street Fighter, and so have other people who have played those different types of games. So, but he was definitely much more on the anime side, but he did a lot of the same stuff that I've done. I mean, an excellent player. He organized events and stuff like that. I mean, he had at the what was it called, the Air Dashers?
Does that
still happen?
Yeah, Easy Air Dashers.
Not so much anymore, but he basically kept the scene alive until it took hold with more of the modern releases, I think.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball and Strive, I think, kind of put the anime scene on the map, and then that he made sure that there was a vanguard there waiting to welcome all the new players. So,
no doubt.
Cool. So, as is customary for someone's first time on the show, we ask, where did your gamer tag come from? What's the origin of that? Said3s.
My God, mine is stupid.
Okay.
It and it has like nothing to do with fighting games. It's something I brought over just in my head, just linked it. So, anyways, I grew up, and I know it doesn't look like now because I'm a fat piece of goo, but like I was in sports my whole life. I mean, from age 6 year round, literally through age 18. And my last love going through high school, I found it much later in my schooling years. I didn't start running track till I was a freshman in high school, as opposed to a lot of my other friends who had done it since like 6th grade. But and I excelled in that sport. I loved it. But my coach, my senior year of high school, he had a lot of try things to get us excited or hyped up or whatever, and just knowledge that he would drop on us. And he had this acronym, the said, SAID, which what he called the said factor, which was stood for specific adaptation to impose demand, which essentially was yeah, I told you it's stupid.
No, that's pretty cool.
which essentially breaks down to, for instance, like it was more in tune with one's athletic ability or their body, their physiology, stuff like that. So your body's ability to, we'll say, tear muscle fibers so that you can grow back stronger, that sort of a thing, specific adaptation to that particular imposed demand on you, stuff like that. And it just was a cool thing that I had in my head at the time, just like the idea of, getting myself beaten down so that I can become stronger, so I can learn, that kind of thing. That's how I translated it. And at the time I was just looking for some random ass name to use in my fighting game career or whatever. And then the 3S is obviously for Third Strike, but it's in homage to my very first favorite and still one of my favorites, but my very first favorite fighting game player, which was Frankie 3S. He was and still is, as far as I know, a Denjin Ryu player. I know he plays Ken a lot too, I think in higher higher stuff. But at the time, in 2005, when I was getting into the game, I mean, he was like the one I watched the most and emulated the most or whatever. And so yeah, that was basically the long version of where my name came from.
So it's like a combination of two like influential figures in your competitive history, right?
Yeah.
Like like a saying from your coach. And that almost sounds like a I've been watching a lot of Cobra Kai recently, and it's like you know how
It's so
different
good,
dojos
man.
have different philosophies and whatnot. It's like you took your coach's philosophy on. That's pretty good. And the philosophy in my mind sounds like victory through suffering or like practicing through the pain, basically. Suck it up and then get good.
Yeah. I mean, you learn. I mean, nothing from winning. It's an act of losing can elicit great wisdom and stuff. So
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah,
Nice.
that's where it came from.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
and
speaking
then
of,
yeah,
yeah,
I was
go
gonna say
ahead.
Scott said FFA Frankie 3S, not NYC Frankie 3S.
Yeah, that he was when he was in California. I mean, that was the Family Fun Arcade is what FFA stands for, and that was like the huge part of the huge surge in Third Strike after I think it was after Scott knows more about it than I do, but after 2003, when a lot of the Japanese showed like what certain characters were really about, what the game was really about, because it wasn't really popular here at the time. And this is before my time because I didn't come in to start playing even remotely. And the only way I got in through the Anniversary Collection, which was released in what 04, I think the beginning of 04. And even then, I didn't really delve into Third Strike that much at the time. And then the Daigo stuff happened and stuff like that. And I, happened to see it, and I was just like, oh my god, this is what you can do in this game. This is awesome. And then it transitioned over to that, and I was, you're playing that online like crazy. That's all I ever did. And then I don't remember how. Oh, I remember. I owe Ray, Hitman Striker. Like he's the whole reason that I got into Roy. Excuse me. That I
Roy.
got
Okay,
into.
yeah.
My bad. Yeah, Roy. That I got into this community at all, and because we played online a bunch, and he hit me up on like Xbox Live and told me to get on the forums or whatever, and that's when I jumped on there and started meeting people and went to first tournaments outside of Tucson, because we had like little random ones like in over at Bookman's or whatever. But I think at the time I didn't really understand or appreciate the breadth and scope and the reach of like competition in general, like throughout the country and statewide and stuff like that, and where it actually how big it was, and that's how I kind of got my foot in the door, was through Xbox Live, playing on Xbox Live or whatever. But yeah, it took me a while to actually get out and go some place at the time, because I didn't really know, and why I was going or whatever. But then I eventually found like my competitive fire. I think it really transferred from the sports that I used to do in high school, and like I needed an outlet, and I felt like this was kind of it. Video games in general, but then it just kind of just became strictly fighting games, and kind of grew from there.
I kind of want to see what casual fighting game player Abe looks like.
I
As somebody
don't
who's
know
never
if
ever
he.
seen that.
Yeah, I don't think he exists. So that's why I told it's tough. It's hard for me because I think I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I know I mentioned it to like Matt and Ernest and some of my friends or whatever. It's just like it's hard because I can't just sit there and just play something just to play it. Like the game's fun, cool, whatever, but it's like there's no end goal for me. Like it's hard. It's hard to want to keep playing it, and which is why I'm not to change gears or directions very much, but like that I haven't really gotten myself involved in anything with six, because my radiologic technology program is starting in June, and I'm literally, my life's going to end for 2 years. And so I'm not going to have any sort of chance to do anything, and I don't want to play it just to have fun and play or whatever. That's not me. Not hating on anybody who does, but that's just not me. And so no, I don't think he exists, John. I don't think casual Abe really exists. There's always something there. Even if I'm trying to have fun, I'm deep down, if I'm losing in some casuals, I'm seething. Like you might not see it, but because I'm supposed to be having fun. But yeah, no, it's rough. And it's just me. I can't get it out of my brain. I don't know how to. It's tough. But sorry, back to the other stuff. That FFA. That was when he was in California and was playing Denjin Ryu or whatever. And he lives in New York now, and he plays a lot more Canner or whatever, and he's still a great player. But like that was that was who I wanted to emulate at the time. Was back at the mecca of Third Strike at the time was at Family Fun Arcade and stuff, and they're bi-weekly, I think they were ranking battles and stuff, and you always waited for them to post the new downloads available. I don't remember where I used to download them from. But I mean, it wouldn't be like till like the following week or like the 3 or 4 days later after. So we didn't know what happened. You know what I mean? Someone like myself or Ernest or Rock or, here or whatever, because I didn't have any contacts over there. I didn't know anybody. But yeah. And then, I mean, it came to the point where I mean, God, going by myself, like when it moved to Dengen Arcade, I was going out there for their ranking battles. Like I would drive myself out to California over a weekend to go out there, play in the tournament, hang out with those guys, and drive back tired as hell on like Sunday night because I had to go to work on Monday morning. And yeah, man, that was. But yes, that's what Scott means by FFA Frankie 3S.
Nice, nice. It's funny you mentioned the like not understanding like the kind of scope and like the breadth of like the FGC, because that's kind of how I was too. Because like I remember looking in magazines and seeing like Street Fighter tournament results like back in the day, right? And I'd see names. Obviously I didn't know who they were at the time, Alex Valle, stuff like that. And then I got competitive in '09 Street Fighter 4, right? And then I was just like, I thought it was the weirdest thing hearing about tournaments on the radio. And I was just like, people do Street Fighter tournaments? And I'm in Alaska, right? And I'm just like, here I was thinking I'm like the one guy that's playing Street Fighter in Alaska. And
There's always a scene.
and then I joined the scene, and then somebody's like, oh yeah, we're planning on going to Evo. And I'm like, what the hell's Evo? And they're like, oh, there's this huge thing. And I was like, what? Is this a whole other scene and all this other stuff all over the place? And it's like, yeah, just boggling my mind at the time.
It's crazy to see like a whole nother level of talent and gameplay. Like there are different, whether people want to admit it or not, there are different varying levels of ability and stuff and competition and like at the state level and then once you get traveling, you see a whole nother world that's unlocked. And you realize just how incredible some players are. And from my perspective, I'll just speak for me. So something that I mean, knew that I was never going to get to a certain spot, whether I didn't have the same amount of time to play as they did, or I just didn't have the same natural talent as a person like, let's say, friggin' Justin Wong or, Daigo or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But it didn't make me appreciate them any less. I mean, they're still outstanding, and I love to see that and watch that sort of competition. But there definitely is a divide, between the actual professionals, who do it every day, who are in top eights all the time on a national level versus, I won our ranking battle here in Arizona. You know what I mean? There is a difference. There is a difference. And that's not to slight anyone or anything or any community or anything like that. Just thoughts from my head.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, even like you said, like with sports, right? Like when you get involved in this thing, right? Like you play Street Fighter, like you get an appreciation for it that like the casual that matches buttons and thinks that, oh, I could do 100 hand slaps, I could do lightning legs, whatever, right? But you gain an appreciation for like the technical side of it. So you see those guys like on the international level, those guys that are like levels above you, and you have a deeper appreciation for that because like, okay, I could do this, but this guy's doing this, right? Same thing with like sports. Like this guy, I run a whatever 100-meter dash, and Usain Bolt's doing it in under 10 seconds, and it's just like, what? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Whole nother world, man.
You mentioned like there was a point when all the Japanese players came over to America and showed the country basically what Third Strike was, and I believe that was like the Tokido Justin match, right, where he showed up with Urian. And then after that, a year later was the Daigo Perry, and that's when you got in, basically?
I mean, like, I got in a little after that. I just didn't know that it existed, that was possible. Like, again, I didn't pick up the game at all. I didn't know I didn't know Third Strike existed at all until, like, '04 when I got Anniversary Collection. And even then, the only reason I got it was for the older Street Fighter on there. I was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna play that." And it's online? Awesome. I'll play that on Xbox Live and stuff, and excuse me. And then
that's crazy to me. I never really thought you were an online warrior. To know that was part of your
I mean, that was my
origin story,
that was my way in. You know what I mean? That's how I came in. I didn't I frequented arcades when I was younger, for sure. You know what I mean? I'm old enough to have been when like arcades were still around. Like for us here in Tucson, it was like golf and stuff. Golf and stuff was a really popular, place to play our video games. And back in like the early mid '90s or whatever. I mean, they had like one of those big, huge screens set up like with a big area, not just like an arcade cabinet, but like a gigantic, screen set up and stuff. And I remember them having different versions on there, from month to month. At one point, they had, you know, um, Rainbow on there at some point, Rainbow Edition, and that again, there were other ones. I can't remember. I know that there were a couple others like growing up, but I was around enough to play in arcades and things like that. But I was a younger kid and didn't really know what he was doing other than I was one of those ones that like, hey, look, I can do specials, but I don't really know what I'm doing, with
Hmm.
them or whatever, and
Sure.
but yeah, no, my real like training grounds and stuff like that were on Xbox Live and playing against people and understanding like, oh, that is smart. I guess I should do that. You know what I mean? And that's no other than that. I mean, um, I didn't really have any other training. If I would have never met Roy, I mean, who knows how much that would have delayed my entry into the actual Arizona scene. I have no idea. But yeah, and then I came in. I think I played at a couple tournaments at Bookman's. That's actually how I met Rock. To be honest,
Oh,
I
okay.
met Rock at a random ST tournament at Bookman's. It was like 8 of us, and Rock and I were in grand finals. And I mean, just like it was. What's so funny is that our first meeting started off exactly how the rest of our time together would go, and that is down to the wire. Like you don't. It went to the last match, last round, last pixel, and he took a shot. I still remember it. He took a shot and it failed, and I happened to kill him for it. But that also encapsulates Rock and his personality and how he plays the game. I mean, like he is not afraid to take like a big shot that I never had that in me. I'm way more robotic, and that's
Hmm.
sort of a play style. But man, I always admired that about him for sure. But he took a shot and it didn't work out on that one, and I ended up winning that. But then we ended up meeting back up like man, maybe like a year after that or something. This was like '05, and then we met up. Like I really don't remember how we got back in touch. I want to say it was through um, Forward through Benner.
Oh, the
Both of
shit.
And
who have been on our show before.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I want to say that that's how I got back in touch with Rock or whatever. And then Rock and I just decided like we want to play Third Strike. Like this is what we want to do. He put a lot more of his time into CVS as well, but like he and I played a ton all the time. And we gained friends and other people and stuff. Like Marvin was always there too. Marvin's been in the scene longer than I have. He was like 18 years old when he got in. Um, and he was always there, but he was more playing Guilty Gear, and Rock played everything. So Rock played with him and stuff. And then, more and people just grew. We met Aaron, I think, or like in '08. I don't remember how Rock met them. It was him, Aaron, and a couple other people who were part of the scene for a little bit. And Matt was in there around that time because I had known Matt through some other friends, it was a whole thing. But and just these other players more and more just started sticking to the community, started sticking to the group and stuff. And
This is the Tucson,
um,
Arizona community, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yep. And
Yeah.
but that was like the core was Rock, Marvin, myself, Sean, Benner, Ford, um, Robert, Romanian Rob at the time. He's no longer in the scene and stuff like that, but he was an excellent CVS2 player. Uh, and there were people before me and before us, but like this generation, Jeff was around. I think Jeff lived in Tucson at some point. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about
So I
the.
mean, he was way before me and stuff, but that's kind of that group that I mentioned is kind of what's grown into, the Tucson scene, and then of course the newer generation like John and Isaac and Nick and now even a few years later Mike and stuff like that. I think Mike came in like 2013, 2014, something like that. So and Ernest too. Yeah, Ernest, duh. I don't know how I forgot about him. Yeah, he at the time was living in Louisiana, like right when we were sort of building up at the time. Yeah, he lived there for a couple of years. And then he moved back like in the end of 09, I think, and jumped right into the scene because he was already playing Street Fighter 4 out there, but just didn't have anybody to play with. He lived in, oh my God, some small town there. I can't remember what it was called. And then when he came back here, I mean, he jumped in just like anybody else, like, you know, like he'd always been a part of the group, and, you know, he always has been now and stuff. So, but yeah, that's a small short version of how the scene grew. And, you know, again, once I got a taste of like Third Strike and what you could do and just how wide open the possibilities were for that game. You know, the Perry was the great equalizer, you know, that really set that game apart from, I mean, really anything else. And it just hooked me. I mean, I have no other way to explain it other than I was addicted, you know. And you know, that again, also compared with my competitive fire, you know what I mean, when paired with that, I mean, it was just, that's all I wanted to do, you know what I mean? I literally just wanted to play nothing but that, you know, go wherever I could, watch whatever I could to take in any sort of new input to get better, things like that, and play people like, you know, Scott. The first time I met him was at, man, was it Devastation 07? I think it was. And he was super nice from the very beginning. As much as I would love to give him crap and lie, Scott was super cordial, and he didn't know me. He didn't know me at all. But he was like literally the first person I met when I walked in the door of, then it was at Rob's house at the time, and shook my hand, said hello, introduced himself, you know, showed me around a little bit. I think I ended up playing him in tournament later, and he beat me, which I will never ever forget and live down. But yeah, he was cool from the very beginning, and I formed a relationship with him, and at the time with Rob and a couple other select people from there and stuff. And I mean, we started gathering people from Phoenix to go and play Third Strike, to play games in general, but Third Strike for me, you know, was all I really cared about. And we used to go to this dude, Yoshi's place.
Also, been on our show before too. Horacio's been on our show.
Oh, has he?
Too.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. That's where a lot of us. I mean, it would be like on a Friday, and a group of us. I think usually it was me, Rock, Marvin, maybe Matt would go. Ernest wasn't here yet at the time. I can't remember, but it would be a car full of us, maybe 2 carfuls, or Sean. Sean was there too forward. He would come with us a lot, and we go up there and play games with him and stuff. And the real like turning point for me, where it was like, I was so mad. I was so mad, but was the very first Tucson versus Phoenix that we did. There was myself and Rock versus Saber and Tutal, Scott and John.
Okay.
And it was tough. I mean, because there was so many people there. Like it was at Yoshi's there. I mean, there was so many people there, and it was literally the 2 of us, and I think like I said, maybe 1 or 2 other people from Tucson, versus like everyone else around us was from Phoenix and stuff. And I mean, we held our own, but we lost. And I was so upset. I was like super upset. Like the way that I get into my head is just like, I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I mean? Like I hate feeling this way ever. And it's not healthy. I know it's not, but it's just the way my brain works. But
well,
you know,
speaking of making you hate feeling this way, I wanted to ask a couple more questions about this event that you lost.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
This is by far
my cat's here, by the way. He's on the.
Oh yeah, your cat.
On the
your
camera,
cat's
everybody can see.
It's Ash.
Hi. Yeah, it's Ash.
So this is probably the first known Phoenix versus Tucson like formal event that I've heard of in the Arizona scene, right? So this was in Third Strike. Do you happen to remember what year it was in?
That was like 2008, I want to say, maybe 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was a 2v2?
I'm pretty sure it was 2008. Yes, it was just 2-on-2.
Okay.
And it all started from this dude, Tommy. I don't really think he's in the scene anymore. Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen him in a while. But you know, it's just one of those things that, like, at the time, and I don't want to get on this whole tangent because this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but like you know, for me myself, when I was first introduced to the boards, SRK,
Mhm.
the forums there. I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but it was an old forums that people used to frequent, and talk about fighting games and stuff like that. Get meet up for online matches, meet up for offline matches, find out where tournaments are. Whole thing. It was all in one. It was event hubs and everything else before event hubs. It was the whole nine, and it's where you'd find all your news and stuff. But you know, I got into a
News.
flame war. Yeah, I got into a flame war with Tommy once, and this is, you know, when I was new and didn't really understand it, and it was the same thing that you see with people who at the time, like years and years ago, were new to like Facebook or other things. They don't know how to act when they're
Yeah.
on when you're talking on, and you just like it's so easy to get upset and mad, and you just go back and forth and not understand when someone's just trolling you and blah blah blah. And I totally like ate the bait, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we I mean, it was that, you know, just said stuff that I would never say now, you know,
Yeah.
to each other, because it's stupid. But it's also, you know, we were just trying to get a rise out of each other, and you know, there was some healthy competition to be bred from it and stuff. And to be fair, also when we were done with the whole thing, when I got, I mean, I think this is all stuff I'm just like admitting here. I'm sure you guys will laugh at, but like
Okay.
after this whole thing, Scott remembers for sure. Like he even said in this, I'm looking at the chat. He's like, "Yeah, you were pissed." Yeah, Tommy. Yeah. So like after it was over, I didn't even want to be there. Like you know, shook hands, whatever, and I went into my car and just sat in my car outside, like because again I can't leave. I'm people's rides and stuff like that too. I was out there for like an hour, just stewing. You know what I mean? And then when I came back in, I mean, everybody was so kind and cool. Even Tommy, you know, we shook hands and laughed and whatever else, and we got the hell over it. And we just played some games after, whatever. And that was a big lesson for me as far as that was concerned too. Is that it doesn't really matter like past that, you know, at least for me and what I've seen with other people in the AZ scene. Like we're all part of this scene, and we all, you know, at the end of the day, Arizona, Tucson versus Phoenix, be damned. I mean, like we're when we travel, you know what I mean. We are the loudest motherfuckers there, like
Yeah.
bar none. I don't care what any other corn group or whatever wants to say.
Yeah.
We are the loudest motherfuckers there, like hands down. And
Caca.
yeah, and we all love each other or whatever. And that was a big lesson for me that I learned that day too. Is this like, I mean, you got to be able to put that stuff aside. You got to be able to grow from this or whatever. You can't let it, you know, sit on you because you're never going to get anywhere. And but it was nice to be able to connect with those guys. I think that's really when I connected with them and was just like, yo, I want to get better. You know, and then you got to some point where, I mean, what was it? I think it was the next Devastation because we'd seen each other now
Real
and
quick
then throughout the year.
before we get there though, I kind of wanted to, like, something I noticed while you were describing that story is it almost feels like a rite of passage kind of deal where like once you guys squash that beef or that beef on Shoryuken, right? Like you guys are all good buddies from then and there. It's almost like they wanted to knock you down a peg or something like that, or like kind of
Sure.
establish a pecking order, and then from then on,
Yep.
everyone's good buddies and just wants to get better. You're on the same team again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all like rite of passage, hazing, whatever you want to. Well, I don't want to call
Sure.
it hazing. I think that has much more negative
Negative connotation to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't take it like that they were being mean to me or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you kind of understood, like, again, I relate it to my experience with sports. It's just like you just kind of go through it because you
Yeah.
start at the bottom. You're going to do that. Like it's just how it goes. There's going to
Yeah.
be someone better than you, at least at first, and you know you work your way up or whatever. And that was a you know, wake up call for myself as well. But it also like helped push me forward as far as my improvement and how I was like, do I want to, you know, get better? Do I want to improve and stuff? And so, like I was saying, translating over to the next Devastation, which was several months after this or whatever. I mean, we were in a room with Scott the night before, uh, and he couldn't beat us. You know what I mean? And he's just, and he came out and said, to his credit too, you know, he wasn't, you know, salty like me. Listen, not everybody's like me. You know, like, you know, Scott is a much better loser. He doesn't like to lose, but he's a much better person if he does lose. And you know, he was like, damn, I can't beat you guys at all now, yada yada. You guys got so much better and all this stuff. And and yeah, you know, I mean, it just showed how much we had grown since that time, and but yeah, I mean, it's all in good fun at the end of the day. I just didn't get that at first, you know. I was like,
Yeah.
man, this dude's really, you know, for whatever reason, Tommy, you know, wants to, you know, be an asshole, and I didn't understand, you know, what he was trying to do, and you know, just creating the hype around it and stuff like that. I mean, like the people showed up for that. Like there were a lot of people there, and that sort of drama, if you will. I know that's not really the correct term, but it brought
Yeah.
people out. You know, it brought people out. So, but that was fun. It was a growing experience for me as a player and as a bit of a person too, dealing with, you know, people and things online and stuff. You know, it was my first foray really into that sort of dealing with crowds, not online, as opposed to like one-on-one messaging or some sort of thing, which is way different. So,
Do you think that kind of um, event could happen in today's FGC, as far as like, you know, there's a big beef or rivalry posted somewhere on the internet in a public area, and fine, we'll settle it offline, and then you have an event and a bunch of people show up to it. Do you think that something like that could happen organically in our fighting game community today?
in the Arizona community,
Specifically in the Arizona community, yeah.
Maybe it just it kind of depends. I
Or
think that
how would it differ? How would it differ from back then and today in your mind?
because we said some horrible shit that we didn't like understand how bad that stuff was. You know, the offensive, you know, sort of a thing, and it was more personal, you know, as opposed to I just think you're fucking whack. I just don't think you're good at this game. You know what I mean? That's different than like, you know, the stuff that I can only speak for myself that I had said. You know what I mean? I mean, again, things from 10 years ago that I used to say that is no longer anywhere near my vernacular at all.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, that's just me, you know, progressing as a human being.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's growth. That's growth. Yeah.
yeah, and no, so I don't think it could get like, I mean, to the fire that I felt that day when I walked in there to play them. I don't think it would feel like that, but there's certainly healthy competition to be had and stuff like that. And I think people could get, you know, pretty pissy at one another. But I also think that I think people are just more reserved, like they're kind of careful about what they say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you know you don't really want to offend, you know, somebody because you don't know where that line is or whatever. You know, so
Yeah.
it's kind of limited to just the game itself. You know, and so could there be like a big, you know, match? Sure, but I think that the only thing that would draw like a crowd like that, there'd have to be like money on the line, like a good chunk
Yeah.
of money on the line that would draw people out. Like, you know, at least a couple $100, a few $100 or something like that. No Nick going, you know, change in my ashtray money matches or anything like that. You know, 67 cents a match or something. No, that's not no. It would have to be like a good amount of money on the line, and then people will be like, "Yo, all right." I mean, these guys really are confident in themselves, and they think that they're better than XYZ at this. So yeah, let's go see this, or maybe a team event, something like that. That could draw people out because you're representing a particular region, you know, Tucson versus Phoenix or something like that. But
Sure.
as like to what that was, and I mean, I guess that technically was a team thing, you know, 2v2.
Yeah.
I don't think that amount of discourse really could exist. Mostly
Yeah.
also because, like, we didn't know each other then. Like, the scene
Yeah.
knows each other now. All the Tucson and Phoenix people, as much as we say all the crap that we say, and it is always Tucson versus Phoenix, I love that those guys and girls. I love them all. You know what I mean? They're awesome, and they're a part of the AZ scene just as much as I am, and anybody else is. So it's a little bit different, like
Sure.
to be able to it have to be from someplace else, you know,
Yeah.
or someone walks in that you know, we don't know them or whatever. But other than that, yes, there could be a nice competitive, you know, exhibition match or something like that. But I don't think it would reach the heights that did just because of the
Yeah.
factors that I mentioned there.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
but
something that we've talked about too. Like, I think John's mentioned it too when it comes to like new people like entering the scene. Like, there's so like, you know, people talk about like the OG and like the kind of I guess the mentality that a lot of people in back in the day had, a lot of the trash talking, a lot of that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of people that coming into the scene that aren't really, you know, don't care for that or don't want to be a part of that, or or they kind of just want to come and play, and that's a turn off to them in some ways. And
Sure.
I don't know, like I got that. I'm that kind of old school mentality too. Like you want to talk trash to me, that's fine. But if I beat you in the game and I talk trash back to you, like you better be ready to deal with it, because you came at me first, kind of deal. And like that, I got that kind of same competitive fire in me too. Whereas I know some people nowadays, like, yeah, they don't want to be involved in kind of stuff like that at all.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's like real money on the line nowadays too, and so
mm,
like your brand is way more important. So if you say anything that could be misconstrued and put you in a in the bucket of being a bigot or something, right? Like it's gonna that's gonna nuke your brand and nuke any kind of
yeah.
ability to move
Yeah.
forward in a career path you want to go in. So that's the stakes are higher, I think. But I guess the big thing is the story the story of this 2v2 for Tucson versus Phoenix seems like it was a very formative and important part of our scene. And I was wondering if there would be a
Mm.
way to recreate it without having to go super dark or super like into that discourse that you were talking about. Is there a way that we could adapt that for a modern era style of discourse while still having the same impact? And
Are
maybe
you
I
talking
don't
about
know.
like? Oh, I thought you were asking like you something like fabricating something like that, or that it would
No,
intrinsically just sort of happen. Like I don't.
No.
like more like just like kind of like looking at it from 1,000 feet. Like, is there a way to get that benefit of having growing from your losses while not having to like? Is there a way to make the loss hurt without having to like really dig deep and go personal like you guys did in the old
What?
days? You know?
It
I think that
feels
just depends on the people, really. Because I mean, as
exactly.
long as
It
you
feels
don't take it
subjective.
personal, there, like I'm not gonna get there. You know what I mean? Like, but if you start attacking me in a certain way, I'm gonna be like, "Wait, what did you just say?"
Yeah, it's subjective. I mean,
Yeah,
it depends, and I think that your question is regarding you know um, some like sort of improvement and stuff. I think that happens all the time because of
yeah,
people like you. You know what I mean? Like you put stuff together like you did the other day and things like that, and it really helps um to bridge any gaps. I know this is still kind of a funky sort of weird time because we're not
Very
really out
weird
of
time,
COVID,
yeah.
but kind of are, blah, 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 that sort of a thing. And so, like, but there's a lot of new players have come in and stuff like that. And a lot of them aren't really familiar with like being right next to someone, like in person next to someone. And it's a different feeling and a different experience. But
yeah,
I mean, yes, to answer your question, I mean, like it can, the whole, um, your question about like, is it possible to recreate that, that feeling of wanting to get better, to be better, believing that you can be better. Yes, I mean, I think that's what the Arizona community has become. I mean, they're a very very welcoming group from Phoenix to Tucson to wherever else. Very very welcoming sort of group. Um, and so yeah, I think that it absolutely can exist and does exist. Uh, to Benny's point about like new people kind of coming in, seeing the scene and maybe how rowdy we were, especially back then, like, 2010, 2011, sort of things like that, when again, things were flying around that like probably wouldn't be said or done now, that sort of a thing. It's different. And that's another thing that I had to learn personally for me, like as someone who realized at a certain point, and I didn't, it just kind of came to me. I didn't really expect it, but the whole like, hey, you're kind of responsible for teaching some of these people now and helping some of these people now, just like Scott helped you, especially in Tucson, because like the scene was much, much smaller.
Mhm.
And I gotta be honest, like the the way that I learned growing up, again, I was in sports so all my life. So I'm being all these teams, basketball, football, whatever else, I'm being yelled at. I mean, that's how it
yeah.
goes. You
Hmm.
create this hardened individual is the thought process or whatever, and I get it. But that's all I knew. That's all I knew how. That's the only way that I knew how to relate to these people, to help teach them, to help fire them up, to help, motivate them in some way. And I didn't learn till years later that not everybody reacts to that the
Yeah.
same way,
Yep.
like someone like Isaac, you know what I mean? Um, he and I have a very he's one of my best friends. I love the guy to death. Um, and in my personal opinion, uh, if he puts himself into a game, I mean, he's probably the top 2 or 3 in that game, period. He's excellent, excellent player. But he didn't start out that way, and he learned, just like Jon, just like Nick, you know, and a lot of those guys, how to handle himself, he taught himself how to play in the game. The only thing I did was help give him pointers here or there. Same thing with Nick and Jon. I mean, they put in the work or whatever, but
Yeah.
I was very harsh. I was always, you know, yelling, why this, do that, blah, 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 you know, stuff like that. And like someone like Nick and Jon, they didn't react the same way that, like, say, Isaac did. I mean, there was, I'm sure he would admit at some point, Jon like hated me for not this Jon, but Velociraptor hated me for a long time, I'm sure, because I used to give him so much crap. And if I had to go back and do it again, I'd probably treat him a little bit differently, just because again, different people can take on different things, and it's something that I see now that just, okay, I can treat this person like this, I can talk to this person like this, but this person may not like this or that, so I'll handle this a different way, yada yada. People are different, you know.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that, like, coaching wise, that I didn't learn till a few years later and stuff. And I mean, those guys were all students of mine, but I do wish that in some instances I'd handled things a little bit differently with some of those guys.
Yeah.
You know, I've in like not in the same time period, but in the past couple of years, I've kind of taken a mentorship role of a lot of the new Street Fighter players, for Street Fighter 5 in particular. And you know, I frequently contrast like how I act as a teacher or a mentor to them with how you kept Jon and Isaac and Nick in line. And you know, I frequently see the downsides of my style, which is much more like kid glove style, like more like instructional and less so yelling and more positive reinforcement than negative reinforcement. And I see the downsides to that, where oftentimes that results in a lack of motivation, if anything. Like if you positively reinforce them someone so much they get jaded and then they don't push themselves as hard. Yeah. Versus if you're always pushing them via negative reinforcement, like, and basically, you know, giving them shit if they're not optimized, you know, making sure that they're actually making the most of their timer and stuff like that, like actual like fighting game fundamental stuff, they get lazy. And so I often think about, you know, is there a way to get the positives from both styles basically, and then marry it into like a more unified way? Because like you said, everybody learns differently, everybody receives that information differently.
Yeah.
I think it's fluid, you know, and extremely nuanced, and you just have to be able to read the room, you know, as it were, so to speak. And I mean, like Scott said, like I don't doubt it at all. I had other multiple people, like Scott said, people hated Abe at first, but Abe's harshness molded them. They would tell me they had issues, and he's not the only one, you know, that I heard that from, you know, sometime later, again, years later and stuff. And that's some of the things that spoke to me. It's just like, damn, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to chase people away. That's not my goal, you know. But I guess I didn't really know how to handle it, because all of my coaching models were all these dudes who, you know, yelled at me to get it right, to do it right, to think properly, to you know, get everything exactly how it needs to be so that you can put yourself in the best position to win, that sort of a thing. And one of my goals at that time, it kind of worked out for me, because I wanted them to hate me, because I just remembered what it was like in a game sense, not in real life, but like in a game sense, to hate someone like Scott or Jon, Too Tall. And Too Tall and I have a very love-hate relationship. We've definitely like given subtle, like, backhanded jabs to one another, and other times we've come out and just said, I fucking hate the way you play, man. Like I still remember I made Jon like super mad. It was just one random casual. This was like, you know, only 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, this wasn't way back in the day. And we were just playing Third Strike at TGZ. And, you know, we've always had that effect on one another. And I have nothing but love for Johnny Boy. But that's always been a thing between the two of us. But I remember how I felt in those instances, and I was like, I want to make them feel the same way that I did in that instance, and have something to look at. Like, I want to beat Abe. I want to beat this fucking asshole. You know, I just want to beat him. And so I, you know, did my best to make sure they never did, and make sure to try and help them if they had questions. I mean, I used to sit down. Isaac would come through on like days where like earlier part in the day where there was no one at Arcade in the Box, and we would just play hundreds of matches and stuff. And I would sit down with John and Nick too when they'd ask and stuff like that, and we'd all play. I mean, like again, it was never my intention to chase anyone away, and I didn't think that I would. I didn't think it was possible. That's how I had it in my head of why I was so rough, because I'm like, these guys aren't going to go anywhere. They want to play, but again, everybody's different, and there might have been some people that I chased away at that time or whatever. And I guess maybe the old me or something, or maybe even now, like thinks just like, oh, well, then I weeded them out, because they didn't really want to do it anyways. But that's not necessarily true. It just could have been like, they just could have made use of a different coaching style, so.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is something more personal, but like, so I was a late bloomer when it came to riding a bike. Like, I didn't learn to ride a bike till I was 10. But when I was like 7 years old, like there was a time I was like on training wheels. We had this like huge ass yard, and I ended up just kind of just rolling. I didn't really know how to brake, and I fell in a ditch. And I think that kind of like traumatized me, right, as a kid. So I was just like, for like the next 3 or 4 years, I didn't want to get on a bike. My sisters were riding bikes up and down the hills and the yards and whatever. And like, it wasn't until I was like in Alaska, and my dad was like, all right, we're gonna teach you how to ride a bike, right? So he like puts me on the bike, and he just like pushes me along, and he's just like, kick, pedal. And I'm just like, I'm trying, I'm fucking crying, and I'm just like, dude, I was like, I can't do this, whatever. And like, and like I couldn't deal with it. And then like one day, my my best friend's brother came out, and he saw me. He saw me trying to do it on my own, and he came out, and he was just like, he's like, hey, just I'm gonna push you along, just go along. And like he was like, real soft toned and everything. And all of a sudden, there I am taking off, and I'm just like, yo, what the fuck? I was like, that's all I needed. I was like, I didn't need my dad was in the army for 20 years. Like he's a very like authoritative figure. And I was just like, I just needed that kind of reinforcement instead of just be like, yo, you're doing it wrong. Like, why do you keep falling off and all this other stuff? So, I mean, yeah, it was just kind of funny just for you to like talk about that and just like, hearing how different people would react to it. Cause like you said, like there's people that aren't going to be very receptive to, the yelling style of the very like authoritative type of person. And like, they don't know how to deal with that. But like from your background with sports, like you said, like that's the kind of, mentality, or that's the kind of teaching method that a lot of people have, is like that molding the individual, like hardening you and like getting you through those moments. And it's just like, okay, this is going to make you stronger in the end, but it doesn't resonate with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's in your name, dude. It's strength through loss, right?
Yeah,
strength through suffering, right? Yeah. Okay.
Benny, I'm just curious, like, because it could be, you could look at it as your dad got you, all the way up there, and that dude just helped you over the edge. So your dad, his wailing on you again and again and again, you know what I mean? And then that dude just gave you just a little bit after or whatever. So that's what I'm talking. Easy, buddy. My cat almost fell. And that's what I'm talking about with people is basically just like, you just got to do your best to recognize that person, back to fighting game sort of stuff, and seeing like, okay, what do they best respond to, and you don't really know. It's hard to really know how they're going to take, whatever you're going to say to them. You just kind of got to wing it. And if you offend them at first, sorry, man, and just kind of move on and take note, that sort of a thing. And just a Nam, if you're still here, I love you too, buddy. But yeah,
the tough part is that there's like, there is a right answer, but the answer differs for everybody, right? And so we try to paint with a broad brush of like, do you want to grow the scene with a kind of a like, it's very broad and it's a very big scene, but it's got a really soft jelly in the middle? Or do you want to have like a really battle hardened top player, like really high placing scene that might be smaller because this top insular player base only plays with each other, right? There's like and you want to find like a kind of like a middle ground, but the end results of both methodologies taken to an extreme are the two scenarios that I mentioned, right? Where you either risk scaring people away, or you risk being kind of redundant or not very known or lower in skill level if you're not too hard enough on people. So I've kind of found over the years, it's like the formula seems to be presented a welcoming facade to, or not a facade, but not facade as in a fake way, but like present the welcoming side to the masses, and then be welcoming that way, and then try to identify the people that really want to take it a step further and take those guys into the isolation chamber and be harder on those guys. So like I've identified a couple people in our Street Fighter scene that I like I'm just like playing really hardcore with and being extra competitive with. And then I have a bunch of other people where I'm like, let's just get games in, let's have fun, let's talk. And um I'm even like approaching the idea of like with the way casuals seem to be going nowadays, with especially with this way Street Fighter PC Day was received. It's like, do we shift focus for offline casuals to be more of like a team sport kind of practice thing, where it's less so about like here's the best in our group and more so about like let's train everybody to get better and do like drills and like kind of like if I was like I did soccer as a kid, right? And we do practice. We wouldn't play games every single time. We would do drills and scrimmages and stuff like that. And what if we take that as the offline casual paradigm and let online be the competitive side,
I don't think you have to like, pigeonhole it so much to that and be like, one is only this, one is only that. I think they both have their uses and stuff. And I think there's a difference between the soccer or sports drills versus how you train for like a fighting game. I mean, because it's at the end of the day, it's you're alone. Either you're going to put the work in training mode. Yes, you could use some people for it, but I mean, like with the way that training modes are built now, you don't really need anyone to learn anything, and you can set up the dummy to do whatever you want it to do in any specific scenario. And I think it's on the onus is on the individual in that aspect. And it's not as easy to get lost in like a good team, like you just happen to be part of a small part of like a really good big team. I mean, with this, it's one-on-one. This is boxing. This is golf. This is tennis. Like you're out there and people know right away, this person's good, this person's not good, whatever. But as far as the casuals go, again, that was something that I kind of cheated myself out of because of the way that I was with people, because I was so overbearing and just my personality and stuff. And so people didn't want to play casuals with me. You know what I mean? Very often. It was the people I was playing casuals with are the people that I was, that I was training with. So I didn't really play casuals per se with people, like normal, as opposed to casuals for me was always training. You know what I mean? Like that's just always was what it was. I just didn't have that. I didn't know how to turn it off or whatever, but I'd see, other groups of people playing casuals and stuff, with the other people that I trained with. And I was just like, well, it's because they're not like I am in the sense of just being a dick, that's they're much more approachable. And again, it's something that if I could do over again, I would, because I wouldn't want people to feel like I wasn't approachable. And, but to your point about like the casuals, like the concentrated core, of like the really elite people in the state or who really want to get better or whatever. I mean, I think people have to decide for themselves, like exactly what do they want out of their fighting game experience and stuff. And if all you want to do is be casual, that is 1,000,000% okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But you can't get mad at somebody else or be offended by somebody else who's obviously doesn't like losing, whether in casuals or not, and they're trying to improve themselves, and so they're a little rougher on themselves or whatever else, or and you're probably not going to be invited to the stuff where people are trying to train really hard. Like and you can't get offended by that. I mean, like you've made your decision that like, hey, I'm just more of a casual person. Cool. You probably aren't going to be involved in that little smaller, faction of people who are legitimately trying to improve themselves in the game, because this is what they want to do. They want to compete. They want to play for money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's how I see that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, speaking of casuals, and then like you mentioned, between you and Rock, like you're the more robotic. Do you actually remember like the first time I met you?
I want to say it was at was it oh my god. I know it was at a tournament.
No.
You were
It was actually
sit down.
no. I think so. To my recollection, I'm pretty sure it was a casual session at Haz's house because there wasn't a lot of people around. I just remember, I think I just kind of went there because I was able to, because at the time, like around that time, I wasn't able to go to like Rambets and stuff because of work. And I remember going into the house and kind of looking around, and like you were in the middle of the living room playing, just playing by yourself. Yeah, Yun. You were playing Yun, just doing whatever combos or something in trading mode. And I kind of walked up and I was like, "Hey man, you mind if we play some games?" And like, I didn't even introduce myself. I didn't say shit. You didn't say shit to me. It was just like whatever.
Mm.
And I was just like, I felt semi confident because like playing Honda, I was just like, Yen's okay. Like he's okay. I don't even know this guy, right? And then I sat down and like I don't think I took a match off of you. And I was just like, man, this guy's just whooping my ass. And I was just like, you're literally like robotic and just like going through it. You didn't really say anything to me. You didn't say you could do this, you could punish this. You were just like just whooping my ass straight through. And I was just like, and then finally like, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go take a break.
Yeah. So do you not know Neil? I feel like I thought I met you at one of his at a tournament that he had. I swear to God,
No,
we played. Oh, it wasn't? Damn.
No,
All right, maybe I'm thinking about somebody else. But so, okay, a couple things. One, the Honda match. Yeah, Cigar Bob. Scott knows what I'm talking about. The Honda match I knew, and I was that was definitely one of those matchups where I was gonna know it because I played Nico all the time, and I just knew that matchup inside and out. And a lot of Honda players in 4 used to like to take advantage of butt splash like all the time. It was heavily utilized because vulnerable frames on the way up, and then there wasn't anything you could do to punish on the way down, and there was a whole mix-up game after that or whatever. But Yun had an easy answer for it, and that was literally his up kicks, his light up kicks beat it every single time with autocorrect, and so it was never a problem. So I didn't have to deal with that. It was something that it took a whole complete phase of the game away from Honda. So that's one. I knew that matchup inside and out. But you mentioned something else that got me thinking, and that is something that I've debated with some of my closest friends, like Ernest and Matt, and I think I've talked to like Nick about it as well because he's the complete opposite of me. So if I'm sitting down, I think I've talked to Jon about it too. You, Muji. If I'm sitting down with somebody and we'll just say I don't know you, like that instance that you brought up, like I'm not gonna say anything to you. I feel like I'm an asshole if I, who has never met you before, who knows nothing about you, am beating you, and then it's super presumptuous. Like I presume to tell you, oh, this is what you need to do. I don't know that you don't know that, or that you want to be told that. I feel it's douchey. I think it's douchey. Like Nick is somebody who doesn't know, and then he's sitting there telling them, like after he whoops their ass, he's sitting there telling them you should do this, that, or that. And I'm just like, ugh, like it feels wonky to me. It feels like I shouldn't, it feels wrong. However, if you tell me like, hey, Abe, you have open dialogue, man, whatever you won't feel like you want to say to me, say it. I will talk your ear off, like no question, none at all. But that was just me. That's where I differ, and that's in how I approach new people and that sort of thing. I didn't want to come off as an asshole. I thought I thought I would if I just started telling you how to do things after I just beat you. So yes, that's why I didn't say anything to you. I think I just believe differently from like someone like Nick or other people who do like that, or which is fine, do you or whatever, but that's just always how I felt. I feel like
I didn't take it as a negative. I mean, like I said, I walk in there like, I think I'm hot shit. I get my ass kicked, and I'm just like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing, and like, I kind of just walk away, like I'm good. Like I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was perfectly fine. But like, as I've grown in the community, like, and I play casuals now, there's definitely a lot more openness. Like if I'm playing somebody, even somebody I don't know, and I'll just be like, hey, what's the frame data on this, or can I punish this? Oh, well, he can't do this. There's that learning aspect, But back then, like, I didn't really care. I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna play this guy. Like, we don't know each other, whatever. And then you just like whoop me.
and I would answer something like that if you asked me. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
But it's and I because I had friends of mine who came to me and would tell me that X player was like upset because he went to my friend and said, well, I played Abe over there. He just was beating me and wasn't telling me anything. And I'm like, you didn't ask me anything. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not just gonna offer this up to you because I feel like a douche. So
that was
funny because I've done the opposite before, where like as far as like being too presumptuous or kind of throwing that information out there when people don't necessarily want it. Like I'm on that end of the spectrum where I go share way too much information, or to the point where it seems boastful, or you're like rubbing it in, being like, hey,
that too.
And I would find myself doing that specifically because I didn't want to be the douche who was just trying to take advantage of someone not knowing to win. And so it's ironic to me that the approaches are from completely different ends of the spectrum, but they still have the same outcome, which is you just look like an asshole no matter what you do. If you win, you're an asshole.
Hey man, it's that situation like you play the kid in Evo, right? Like, are you supposed to like beat his ass? Are you supposed to like sandbag a little bit and then beat his ass? Like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
like, you can't lose.
The place I've landed on is like now I kind of play like Abe, where I don't really say anything unless like I've kind of set up a social contract with them in advance, being like, hey, I'm here to grind. If you set the expectation of being like, hey, I'm here to grind and learn, and so if you have any questions, ask me, and then they don't ask you any questions, then you don't need to say anything, or you shouldn't say anything because you don't want to piss them off, right? But on the flip side, if they start asking you a bunch of questions, if you open up the door and say it's okay to ask me questions, then they'll go, and then you can start talking about it and have a healthy conversation that way. It just like it's the same as what we were talking about earlier, where everybody's got a different answer, and we just have to be better at finding it in an individual one-on-one basis.
You do your best to like read the person and understand what they want or whatever. But like by contrast, you need to speak up, people. Ask the person if you're losing to them. Ask them at least in Arizona. That's all I can really speak to. Anywhere else, I don't know. Maybe they're dicks, but in Arizona, you can literally ask anyone and they will tell you anything that you want to know if they know it. And if they don't know it, they'll probably go ask somebody else who probably will know it. That's just how it is. But just ask. That's it.
When I was younger, I took that to an extreme as well, and I misinterpreted what that meant. And I was like, because everyone said, just ask questions, ask questions. So there was one time, I think it was against Nico. I beat Nico in tournament, and that was an upset at the time. And I asked him, what do you think I could do better right after I beat
Gotta give him a minute.
So bad, dude.
Gotta give him a minute to get over the log.
He responded very, very kindly. He responded the right way. He said, you just fucking beat me. Why would I tell you anything? Which I think that's completely fair now. But like at the time, I had to learn that social skill of being like, okay, that's boastful. That's too much. And in reality, it came from the same spot of being like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you about the game afterwards and have a discussion. Sure. But how you do it is important.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you were like all adrenaline and hyped up, and your natural
I wanted
reaction
to gloat my win. I think there was some boastfulness in there too.
Oh, was it? Okay, I thought your natural reaction was just like, hey, I still want to improve. I know that I took one win off of you, big freaking deal, but I don't know, but I guess maybe there was some.
No, I think it was more of the latter, how you just described it, but. Subconsciously, maybe there was some boastfulness of being like, I want to ride this,
Yeah.
But
nice.
Yeah. Being a graceful loser, being a graceful winner, like being a robot. Actually, one thing I wanted to bring up is that we've had several guests on the show that have mentioned Abe on the episodes. And pretty much every time it's like, yeah, I fucking hated losing to Abe that one time, or I beat Abe and it was the best thing ever. And so you mentioned that like everybody, when you were training them, you wanted them to hate you. Nowadays, like I feel like you have had a reputation back then of being a kind of a heel in Arizona. And even when I first met you, it was kind of like that, where some people were like, hey, that's Abe. Like, don't piss him off. There's a little bit of that. So like you had a heel reputation for quite a while.
I always felt like I was, that I played that role, and I never really realized how much I really enjoyed, I guess not necessarily that role, but like listening to the crowd, because there was a tournament, I think I want to say it was at UAT at the time, and I was the only one that went. It was Street Fighter 4. I want to say it was like 2012, and there was a good amount of entrants. There was like 40 entrants, but I was the lone Tucson there. The guys were coming up later for whatever reason. I can't remember. They were going to come up later to play casuals and hang out, but they couldn't make it for the tournament. And it was rough, man. It was rough listening to the crowd, but I loved it like so much. And which is why I don't really like playing with headphones on, because I like to hear my buttons, and B, I like to hear what people are saying around, or cheering or booing or whatever the case is. But I still remember they walked in midway into grand finals that I had made it to. I think I was playing a Reese. I was playing against a Reese, because I remember I lost to Louis in, I want to say like winter semis, and the place exploded. And Louis plays funky as hell. And he also plays a funky character. Like he's just, you really have to
be on point.
It's really difficult to play against him. But so we met again in losers finals, and I beat him, and he was fuming. Lou is a lot like me too. He's not a good loser, and he was fuming afterwards. But no, so midway through grand finals, and that matchup was awful. Like Reese hated playing Makoto versus Yun. It was terrible. That I think pretty sure that grand finals was 6-0. But they came halfway through it, and you could hear them as soon as they walked in. They saw me playing and started cheering or whatever. I didn't realize until that moment, like, how much a cheer or a boo, like what it does, how it makes you feel, the adrenaline that it gives you, and things of that nature or whatever. And but yeah, that was a big moment for me in that instance to figure out, like, damn, like, okay, I guess I really do like hearing the crowd. I like the reactions, and such. So
sure. So another I wanted to build on kind of like the robotic comment that Benny made a little bit earlier, and ask you a little bit about your play style, where you mentioned that Rock plays heart, you play with, I guess you would play with mind, I guess, in a way,
a little more,
or body more so, like you have pretty decent execution as a player as well. Where, now that you've had several years as a player to kind of really kind of pick apart where your strengths and weaknesses are, do you have an idea of like where you would choose to play with heart versus playing with your mechanics, or like when do you choose to throw caution to the wind versus, because with Rock we know it's like pretty much all the time he'll DP round one, right? But like for you, like what makes you decide I want to stop playing the matchup and I want to start playing the person? Like what kind of tells are you looking for when you're playing against somebody?
That's an easy answer. It's basically people that I know or that play with me. Like I would be a total dick if it was like playing like me and Muji. Yeah, I mean, because we, especially in 5, because we trained with each other like crazy. So, for me in my brain, I was just like, I can't do any of the crap I normally do, which was hard for me. You know what I mean? And so I'd literally have to change my entire strategy to play someone like that, which is why I hated playing people that I trained with, because for that specific reason or whatever. But I like the way that I play. You know what I mean? I like the precision nature of it or whatever. But I will say I'm boring. I'm definitely boring. I'm not that person who's really going to wow you other than a decision that I make. Like the things that people say when like Rock surprises them is, oh shit, dude, just DP'd out of nowhere, or man, that was just a great read or whatever. Whereas opposed to when people say something good about me, it'll be like, damn, that was a nice block, like something like that. You know what I mean? Like that was a really good block, or something. And that's just that's just the difference. But like
I used to hear it as like a backhanded compliment. It would be, well, Abe played the matchup the way that he should. that would be the result, because he would always play a character that was pretty strong, right? Like a Yun or a Jin or whatever. And so everybody would, like, I remember early on, a lot of people were just like, Abe's just a tier whore. He's just gonna beat you with the tiers, and that's it, and just take that away from you. So like I forgot my point. But basically, you're an asshole, Abe. I think that's
no. People asking me are telling me like, trying to say that I was some sort of a tier whore. I mean, I don't give a shit about that. I just in my head it was like, I want the best chance to win. And a great character will give you that. It doesn't necessarily have to be the top, but it's going to be like a very high ranked character. And it always blew my mind because people would bag on people who played top tier, just like, oh, I don't want to play that, that top tier character. I want to play a lower or mid tier character because they're more fun. I want to have fun. And I used to tell them the same thing. And if anybody of my guys are listening right now who knew that I always said this, hey, look at me. Winning is fun, right? Winning is fun. That's what it is. And so that's how I saw it. It's literally how I saw it. And if I had to learn like a new character, like in 5, I wasn't sure who I wanted to play. And then I saw Jon. I was living with you, Muji, at the time. And I wasn't really sure if I was going to play 5. And then there were a couple times where you asked me to help you out in training or whatever to do something. And it was okay. And then I'm like, all right, I'm watching some stuff. And then I saw Chun and I was just like, whoa, she looks really cool. Like she looked really third strikey and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, maybe I want to try. And then found out she was stupid, and so that kind of helped me out a little bit more. I was like, okay, and she's really good. All right, okay, I might have to try this out a little bit more. And I took my ass kickings from Jon like plenty, and I just grinded for several months, and like 2 or 3 months, and then I was up to par with the rest of the top players, and won a few tournaments and stuff. But when Chun got nerfed like pretty hard from 1 to 2, then I was like, okay, well, who am I going to play now? And Akuma looked really cool. I just didn't know how good Akuma was. And then Tokido was playing Akuma, and I guess it wasn't too surprising because he plays that character. But like, I don't know. And then you find out that Akuma's really good also, and I was like, okay, cool. And then you just, for me, yes, I don't have a problem jumping from one character to another. Same thing with 5. I didn't have really a character I wanted to play in 5, and so I played Sakura because she just seemed fun at the time, but she wasn't very good. Right? But I also played Sagat, here and there. And then Super, I played Guile, who was dumb. And then AE comes out, and of course I was going to play Yun. And so played that character. I stuck with him through 2012 because I mean, even though he did get nerfed hard, he still was like a top 10 character. But yeah, if I have to switch, I'm going to switch. I just want the best chance to win. That's just how I see it.
That was a formative moment in my fighting game career too, because I was always about like, character individuality. And like, I remember with some of my old training groups, we'd be like, I want to be the best. I wanted to be the best Ibuki in Arizona. And like my goal was, kind of segmented to that specific scope of being like, I want to be the best at my character, and I want to be the best at my character in my scene. But then over time, I kind of shifted to more being like, I want to be a better player. And a lot of that was when we started living together. And I ended up switching to Chun-Li as well after.
Yeah, I remember.
after
Even
getting my ass
was
kicked
not a
by
bad
you.
matchup, but yeah, I remember.
Karen was a bad. Karen lost to Chun.
I don't think so.
Guaranteed.
I think she was good. But I do remember you switching.
Yeah, because I was like, I want to do the cool shit that Abe's doing, and the same way I realized I don't want to be limited by my character. Like if I'm always upset about a matchup, and I'm always like, that's the reason why I'm not getting any better is because the matchup sucks, then I want to remove that obstacle if I can, and just say I'll take a character that has advantageous matchups across the board. They may be busted, but then if I lose, it's my fault then, as opposed to if the matchup being 7-3 and I'm just fighting an uphill battle because I wanted to be a unique snowflake,
Yeah. And I think that was part of the positive side for me. Was, I mean, I guess that negative side too is just like, I had the best chance to win, but it definitely hurt if I lost, because I mean, at least according to the tiers, which are completely subjective, it's just like I shouldn't have here or there or whatever. But yes, at the end of the day, I always want to give myself a chance to win, even when I was like branching out for me, because all I had played through my early years was Street Fighter games, from ST, Third Strike, 4, the best game to be released between the years of 2008 and 2015, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and then playing 5, and then these last couple games I played though were completely different to me, which was the new Sam Show, which both fantastic. Sam Show and Grand Blue Versus, so both of them are excellent games. But even in those games, I mean, I played Genjiro in that, which was at the time was like, when it first came out, was the best character in the game. And then in Grand Blue Versus, my main was Fairy, who at the time was a top 2, top 3 character in Grand Blue. So it doesn't matter what type of game or whatever. Even when I branched out to some different types of fighters, I mean, I wanted to play the better characters. That's just always been me.
Yeah, and like another like lesson I learned after kind of adopting your tier mindset was that like there's a skill that to be had about like switching between top tiers, because every game that you play, the top tier is going to be it could be a completely different style. And so if you are dedicated to playing top tier, you have to play multiple styles. And like back then, if I wanted to be the best Ibuki player, I could just find the next set play monster in a different game and just play that, right? But if a grappler was top tier for a little bit and you wanted to switch to that to stay ahead of the curve, like there's a whole nother skill set or a whole nother muscle you have to exercise. And I don't think
no doubt.
that's I think that's glossed over a lot when you kind of just say, oh, this person's a tier whore. Like playing top tier can be hard if you're switching constantly.
It's dismissive, but it's very easy to say. It's just someone who wants to play as if it mattered. Because the people who would say that, and it never ever bothered me, first of all. But I mean, the people who would say that are people who I guarantee you I would beat regardless of what character I played. Whatever. But like the people who knew, like, I think there's a necessity to it as well. Like Scott kind of mentions it a little bit in the chat. It's just like, you need someone who's going to play that, because you're going to face a ton of them, an army of them at like majors. And yes, I get it. There's differences in players, the way that they play and stuff like that. But the basics of how that character functions, I mean, you want to know the ins and outs of that top tier character, because I'm not the only one that thinks like this. There's a lot of people who want to play that top tier character to give them themselves the best chance to win. So we're useful in that sense. I am useful in that sense, as helping people get the upper hand on some other top tier characters who are played by other players at majors and stuff.
I had this theory too about like some of the more successful players that we've had out of our state, like that have gone on to play at a national or international level. And I've noticed that a lot of them that are really well known play really oddball characters. And I think that this is kind of tangentially related, but what I think happens is, like, we'll get like a character specialist. We'll have the people locally that play all the top tiers, like myself and yourself, and then we'll get the people that play the really specialist characters, and then everybody will get good together. But then what gets people noticed nationally or internationally is when they play the oddball characters. Then you get people like California or New York or wherever, or Texas or wherever, being like, I want to get practice with that guy. Because they play the oddball character matchup that I don't have experience with, versus the person who plays top tier in Arizona might get kind of left in the cold, because it's like, they can get that practice at home,
Sure.
And so that seems to me like that's a pattern I seem to have noticed, where it's like Viper, like Latisse Viper, or Armando Shuma, or Scott Sakura, or Juicebox's Abel, or Nico's at Honda. Like, it seemed like there's a lot of like oddball characters from Arizona specifically, because they could attract talent that the top tier a specialist in Arizona wouldn't be able to do, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I mean, there's going to be much more of, for instance, the type of characters that I play out there. And so when you get like a really, really good player who plays like a mid-level, character, I mean, that is, that's that much more special. Like, man, okay, I need to focus and play with this person because I really need to learn this matchup, because not many people play this character here or there or whatever. Like a Ty, for instance, plays Alex in Third Strike. I mean, like, can I just say, I don't get it. I don't get why Alex is a popular character. Could we just, why? Oh my God. I don't understand it. He's American. Woo! But I mean, like, he's from Third Strike itself. I never understood the look or whatever, never cared. Maybe it's because I wasn't really into wrestling, and I don't know. But anyway, but he plays a character like that, and he plays that character extremely well. And he was always a character I had a hard time with. And if you look in Third Strike, and if you look at the tier list, the matchup list, or whatever, I mean, Young destroys that character. But I never really had someone who played that character very well. And so it was always tough for me to beat Ty. He's so good, and I didn't have that experience I needed. So yes, it matters to those people. They want to get this, especially people who are playing on a tournament level, travel level. I mean, like, you want to get whatever experience you can against those characters that you're not going to find very often, but you don't want one to pop up and beat you randomly. So yeah, I agree.
And then what happens is those people that play oddball characters end up getting tapped by the best players, and then they end up getting better and backfilling any weaknesses those characters might have by playing the best of the best, right? It's something I noticed specifically with Street Fighter 6 in the betas when I was playing Chun-Li, is that, like, because that character was rare, I had an easier time making like social connections with people outside of our state, because I had something more to offer compared to if I, was just a really good Ryu player or something.
Oh, yeah. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point because, like, yeah, playing Honda, like, I had Nico here, but then like through SRK, like we had a group, and like we have actually like a little Facebook group of just Honda players from like all over the nation called the Bathhouse, where it was just like
That's awesome.
it was just us, like, posting posting clips of our, doing well, or like, passing knowledge on and stuff like that, and it's just like, you get that connection with people because not everybody, like you said, if I was playing Ryu, yeah, I could talk to a million people that play Ryu. It's like, oh, you play Honda? I was like, oh, okay. Oh, well, you could do this in this matchup or this, and it's really kind of cool that you have that kind of connection with people.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's like a giant list of matchups, and it's like, in this one you can butt slam, and this one you can't butt slam. that's the entire thing.
Literally the list.
This character has an Ultra 2 that'll punish it on block, so you can't butt slam him. But sometimes you can.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
man.
One other thing I wanted to touch on with Abe, because when I think of Abe, like, one, I think of the head of Tucson, right? Like you said, like you were the kind of like the coach or whatever, right? That's how I always envisioned you. Like every time I would go somewhere, if you're there, you're cheering on your boys, you're always backing them, whoever they're playing, and it's just like, if Rock's up, you're yelling shit at him over the stream station. If Marvin's up, you're always talking over him. Um, the other thing was like, yeah, you're always, helping out, streaming, whatever, running stuff. And then the third thing I always think about is like the exhibition events and the stuff that you've run, whether it's like the bar fights, the team tournaments, the invitationals. Like, what's been like your motivation behind doing stuff like that?
Honestly, the easy answer is because no one else was doing it. You know what I mean? That's the easy answer. But I just really enjoyed the general camaraderie, and the interaction between, in particular, the two cities. Like that's always been a real soft spot for me. Is it just the whole Tucson versus Phoenix thing like just means a lot. When I say it, I feel a little bit different when I say it versus
Yeah.
people who maybe didn't come up as early as I did or whatever. They're just saying just because they're there with everybody else, and that's fine. They're still a part of the group. Whatever. I'm not excluding anyone, but it just feels a little bit different when I say it or when Rock says it. And
Yeah.
but the exhibitions were in that sense, in that vein, were important to me because I felt like that was a a very important area to focus on to make people more competitive. You know what I mean? And to get people
Hmm.
out of our usual, hey, we're playing every Friday night at this place together with our group of Tucson. It gave us a chance to, hey, it's been a few weeks. Let's test our metal against these guys over here. Make sure we're still better than they are, and see what new things maybe they have. Because I'm sure, like Scott and all the rest of those guys over in Phoenix. I mean, like they're going to come up with their stuff to try to beat us on our side or whatever. But I felt like it really fostered that sort of uh, really competitive fire. You know what I mean? Like as far as
Yeah.
the exhibitions go, and I just wanted to do something different besides a normal tournament. And so and I wanted to like I wanted to prop up the people who have obviously like worked their asses off to be as good as they are as good as they are at the game, and just be
Yeah.
like, look, so for like True Grit, for instance, or what was it? Hold Your Own. I can't remember
Well, Joe.
what other name I changed it to. Um, these were the top players, and I liked to put them up there to be like, oh, these to try and have whether it was people from B League or people under them, in the Qualicrier, which is still the greatest name of any tournament I have ever made up, was the Qualicrier. But no, and I just maybe it might spark someone here or there to want to get better. Just like, you know what, Abe's right. Those guys like are the best guys, and say I want to be
Hmm.
on their level. I want to be in B League. I want to be in A League.
Yeah.
Whatever. You know what I mean? I just tried to breed competition anywhere that I could, and like any sort of variety, change it up. So not doing exactly just running the same tournament over and over and over. Even though the Rambats are good, and I think the Rambats are important.
Yeah.
That there's that consistency in tournaments and stuff, so that you can see on a regular basis how you stack up and how you're growing and how you're improving and stuff. And but I wanted to do things beyond just a normal, hey, we got 30 people together, let's throw them in a bracket, mix it up, and then go, and getting more matches in the True Grit series, the round robin format and stuff like that. I always like that aspect of it. Everybody's playing everybody, so nobody dodges anybody or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, these are the best people, and we're gonna find out who's the best today, because like boxing and other stuff like that at the higher levels, and because of the nature of those games and sports, it could just be your day. It could just be your day,
you can't
for
do an
someone
open
who
bracket for boxing, right?
right. Yeah. That would be really bad. But yeah, no. And sometimes that's how it is. I mean, you see stuff and it's like, look, I'm not trying to slight anybody or whatever, but you see stuff where, you look at placings for someone like, I'm just going to use this as an example. So if I'm pissed some people off, sorry. But like, no one expected Problem X to have the run that he did in Street Fighter V and beat Tokyo. They just didn't. Like, is he an excellent player? Absolutely. No question. No one's questioning, his greatness and stuff. I mean, especially now. But like, that was just his weekend. That was just his weekend. Same thing with Luffy. That when he won, what was this? Was it Street Fighter 4?
Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, that was just his weekend, man. And holy cow. But that's just the nature of these fighting. It can be like that sometimes, something where it's just like, this person's probably not going to win. They're very good, but they're probably not going to win. These are your top 8 who are always going to be up there, Tokyo Daigo, whatever. But then someone just comes out because they're just feeling it that weekend, something special with them in the air or whatever. Just like, boxing matches, sometimes they just go that way. That's it's just what it is. But no, but to finish up answering your question, I just want to give people a good amount of variety and to breed as much competition as I could to keep people wanting to improve, both in Tucson and in Phoenix and together. And I just loved being around the community as well, and doing what I could to help people show off how good they become. You know what I mean? And the improvements that they made upon themselves as players and stuff like that. And I loved, of course, seeing the little fights and rivalries between our own, Muji here and Tyler or something, you know what I mean? Or
There's
that's
no
what I'm saying.
rivalry there. There's no rivalry there. I've always been better.
I love that little stuff, and moments that I'll never forget as well, like between Nick and Isaac, and Jon and all those guys. I just love the community, and I love doing whatever I could. And I mean, I had to call it quits at some point, and so I'm glad that I did. I don't regret being in retirement at all. It's been nice to not have to worry about what the next event is going to be, and how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to set it up, and I mean, I put money into that stuff too. As far as like, I mean, I paid for like graphics and things of that nature, equipment that I got so that I had some sort of like a high quality stream and stuff like that, and I poured my heart out into that stuff. And I mean, it had to come to an end at some point or whatever. And whether somebody else takes the reins and picks up from here, or maybe it's all going to be online now, I don't know. But I feel like personally I got out like at the right time, for me at least, and climate wise as well. But yeah, that's to answer your question.
Yeah, no, I bring that up because like that's like I've talked about it on the show. I think when Dragon Ninja was on, because he was like those events in particular for me were a huge part of like my development, kind of as a player, and then also kind of like as my arc, I guess, if you want to, like, because I never considered myself like top player in this scene, right? Like I don't think anybody would, but I always, like, considering like the time that I put into it and where I felt like my skill level was, like I was like, I'm a B level like gatekeeper, and I'm happy to be there, right? Like every now and again I'll beat Mocha, I'll beat Rock, and like I still remember those times, like I've been at the Ranbats and I'm like, hey, Abe, I beat Rock, and you're like, what? And I was just like, yeah, I beat Rock. Move me in the bracket.
Good work. Moving you on.
And it's like, and it's those kind of things, and it's just like, Yeah, because like I remember that like there was a lot of drama and stuff with like your invitational picks and stuff like that. Because people are always like, "Oh, Abe's got a soft spot for Scott," and blah blah blah. And I was just like, "Well, you know what? I remember you had the stream or whatever, and I was like, you know what? You want to get there? You work your way through it. Beat people in the qualifier. Get yourself in there, and right. And like that was for me, like that was a huge competitive thing for me. Like when I wasn't, when you didn't pick me the first time, like I didn't look at it as like, man, Abe just hates me, whatever. He thinks I suck. I was just like, you know what? I started looking at who was there, and I was like, yeah, I'm not on these guys' level, but I want to get there. And like that the first one was True Grit, right? I think it was the first one.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
And the second one, I think.
No, the first one was True Grit because that's the one where I felt like I embarrassed the shit out of myself because I played Dragon Ninja on stream like as my first match, and like he beat me, and I'm like, nothing against him, but I was just like,
Wait, was this the Qualicrier?
Yeah, that was the Qualicrier, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, he beat me in the first match on stream. I played absolutely horrible, right? I go into losers, and then I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I got a fucking hill to climb, right? And I start going through these names. I start, I'm looking at you like, hey, I beat this guy. And you're like, I heard somebody in the background. I don't know who it was. And they were just like, oh man, Benny's making a run. And then I run into Chiron and I lose. And like, it was so frustrating to me because I was just like, man, if I didn't lose that first match, maybe I'm further ahead, right? But I was just like, that's on me. And like I could have easily like left. And I remember like that was the rise of Mocha, right? Like that's the one that Mocha won, and then Show got second. And I remember sitting there and like, you see in sports all the time, right? The guy loses the championship, the confetti's falling in his face. And like I stayed in that room, dude. I stayed in that room and I saw everybody like, you guys congratulating Mocha, congratulating Show. And I was just like, that should be me. And like, man, I held that L for the whole fucking year. I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you to announce the next one the next year. And I was just like, when you announced the next one, I was like, this shit is mine.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny too. Like that's part of being a TO and wanting to run those sorts of events is like, you got to make decisions, and no one's ever going to be happy. There's always going to be people crying or complaining or whatever, or, trying to say that you favor one player over another or whatever. But the truth of the matter is that I ran all the events before that leading up to it. I looked at the results. I saw that Scott, who maybe didn't, for instance, just to take off your point, maybe didn't win the tournament, but you know what? He got 5th or 4th or 3rd every single time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like I'm talking about consistency, the people who were there. And also, if I told Scott, like, yo, man, I need you to practice for this, like, be good, would you? He would take it seriously. And he's, old scooter and not a lot of people know him or whatever. But when that guy like puts his mind to it, like, okay, I'm going to go into training mode for this. Like, I mean, he can beat anybody in the state, like period. And just with just his experience alone. So it was just like, I also knew that like I would get a show out of someone like that, you know what I'm saying? And there were other people at the time who, like I think for one of the last ones, like there were a couple people who just really hadn't proved themselves yet, that they were obviously like, okay, these people are coming up. It's obvious, but they hadn't really been as consistent as a lot of the other players were or whatever. And so, I tried to be as neutral as I could about everything, and again, at the end of the day, it's just stuff that you just had to ignore from my point and just be like, I mean, this is if you want to come to it, come to it. If you don't. But then 50 people would show up for the Qualicrier. So obviously you guys wanted to be in this. And did you make it? Did you get to B League? Did you make it up to A? Okay, then, I mean, it's just, it was rough, but that's another reason too. It was tough, man.
If I could set the tone for the audience here too, because the True Grit Invitational was a invitational for both Street Fighter 4, 2 invitationals for Street Fighter 4, and then 1 invitational for Street Fighter 5, if I recall correctly. And it was 8 people would play in the B League, and they'd play in a round robin to be the best B League player, and then that player, I believe, would be promoted to the A League, and then that there would be like an 8-man invitational round robin for that as well. And I guess one year there was the first year there was a bunch of dropouts, and so you ended up having an open qualifier for it, right? And
I do remember that.
And so then, but I remember you specifically didn't want to hold that qualifier because you were like, no, people like these are my picks and stuff like that. And then eventually, if people
I did
cried enough, right?
That was in your mind. Called it I was very upset to have to run that. I did not want to do it, but at the not just at everybody else because complaining, but more the behest of people that I confide in and that who know me and mean a lot to me and stuff, you know, they were like, look, man, it's not a big deal just to run one random tournament, just to let somebody in, you know, and at the end of the day, I ended up liking it because I was including everybody. There was an open bracket for anyone to join, and if you really thought you were that good, then hey, you'd make it all the way through it. You know what I mean? But at first, it was like, no, I didn't. Mostly because it was going to be another tournament that I was going to have to run. You know, besides the two already, it's like you guys are going to make me run another tournament. That was what was like. That was a big annoyance to me. But again, also it was also like this is my event. These are my picks. Go fuck yourself. You know, I didn't. That was it. But it ended up being a very important, very loving part of that series. But it still is the name just kills me. And the graphics that Jelani made too, with like the tears in them. Oh my God, it was perfect, man. I friggin' loved it, dude.
I think what was beautiful about it was that it gave you, like, because the whole point of the Invitational was to light the fire for those 16 players, really. Absolutely. And to make sure they went really hard. But then it allowed you to go past that, you know, that hardened group, the hardened center of the scene, and stretch out to the greater scene and see that there was a way to light that fire still as well. And someone like Benny, who then made his way into that inner circle, or that jelly donut center.
That was great. Yeah, I mean that second year, like when I had to play in that other Qualicrier, and that was on my wedding anniversary. And I was just like that was a huge day, because I was just like, you know, I had to talk to Mary, and I had to tell her and be like, hey, there's this big tournament coming and I want to play on this, but it's on our anniversary. And she's like, okay, like, you know, she's been super supportive. Like I've been really lucky to have that. And like, you know, like I said, like I was coming in after that, holding that L for the whole year, and I was just like, nobody's beating me today. Like that was my mentality walking in. And like I walked out of there, and like I said, like that was, in terms of like my kind of like my AZ fighting game career arc, like that was like literally the peak was there. And then actually being in the B League and like seeing my name on that flyer, I was just like, I'm here. And then again, part of that drama too was like, you had put Mocha in B League, and a lot of people were like, Mocha should be in A League. Why is he in B League? And I was like, that's Abe's choice. And for me to be the only person that beat him in B League, like that, you know, elevated me too. So I was just like, I'm here. And I also beat the guy that everybody thinks should be above everybody else. So I was just like, that was like pretty much like the peak for me.
That's dope. Yeah, and then he won B, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I do remember that.
I actually have another cool memory that I'm going to show visually on the stream here. Is I was able to find some of the old event pictures, and this is one of them. It's a big black image. Because there was a power outage during the B League Invitation.
I remember that.
Yeah, so Benny took a bunch of pictures of it.
I wanted to die. Like seriously.
There's Mocha right there.
Yeah.
I could not believe that the power went out, man.
And then then Benny's kids decided to play on the Simpsons cabinet instead.
Yeah,
the B League blackout.
The B League blackout.
The B League blackout. Yeah, and it really, you know, there's some good moments that I remember from those tournaments. Like the Qualicrier in particular. I think one of the last ones was, I want to say grand finals was Gabe Z and Rika.
For 5?
Yeah, for 5. Yeah, and like it was like down to the wire, like the last moment, and something crazy happened. I can't remember, but it was a neat moment. It was cool to see that like, you know, everybody got that involved. Like people were like on edge, like these events, like people were on edge at those events. So you could tell like motherfuckers wanted to win, you know.
I commentated, I think 2 of them. I think I commentated the Street Fighter 4 A League and then the Street Fighter 5 B League. And it like I think the Gabe Z and Rico one I commentated with Matt, and we both just like I was hoarse the next day from yelling so much and getting so hyped.
All right. I remember that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, those are fun, man.
Yeah,
those were great events, man.
Cool. Well, that about wraps up the episode as far as time goes. I'm sure we've got
it's almost 8.
We haven't even talked about some of your tournament organizing like experience in depth. Like we've talked about like one event right here, but there's plenty more. We could talk about Grand Blue or Sam Show at a later date, Cross Tech at a later date for sure. Is there anything you'd like to shout out for our viewers here, or anything you'd want to promote on your way out here?
I mean, obviously, just to you guys, this is really neat that you guys are doing this. Again, anything for the community is always going to have, you know, my love and support. So, you know, thanks to Benny and J Bones here, and I mean, not really much else. You know, of course, thanks to everybody who supported my tournaments, the ones that I set up, you know, from whatever the True Grit exhibitions or Tucson versus Phoenix stuff, or you know, regular old ranking battles, whatever. I cherished every single one of you coming out there to compete, and I'm appreciative. And you know, for going way back real quick, to the people who helped bring me up in the scene, particularly someone like Scott. I wouldn't be here without you, and thank you for welcoming me with warm, open arms, and teaching me, man, and teaching me not just to be a better player, but how to be a good community leader, and you know, giving me the knowledge and tools that I use to help my scene grow in Tucson, and yeah, just thank you to everybody. You know, if I you know, never didn't seem like it or something, I love everyone in the scene. You know, I really do. So that's about
Cheers,
it.
Oh, and one final thing. The name of the podcast is
yes.
yeah.
It's Absolute Guard, right? And so
oh, right.
Yeah, what originally happened was, I think while we were living together, Abe, this was an idea, like the name was something that you and I came up with, and we're like, hey, let's name something after this, because it was such a cool ass name. I think even the Street Fighter V clan name is AZ Absolute Guard.
Oh yeah, for Street Fighter V,
yeah. And so when Benny and I were trying to figure out the name for this show, we were like, tried everything we fucking could to find. I think we did Sonic. We were trying to do Sonic Boomers, I think, for a little bit, and we're like, it wasn't going well. And after a while, I was like, what about Absolute Guard? Let me hit up Abe and see if we can use the name, because I think you had already said you were going to use it for something, and I can't remember what it was.
I had planned to, and then it just didn't work out. And you, being the respectful and considerate human being you are, yeah, sure, you reached out and were just like, is this cool? And I'm just like, yeah, man, this would be, sounds like an awesome idea, run with it, you know. But when you guys make your first 10 million, I get 10%, so we're good.
Fair enough. So yeah,
I love the name. I always love that name.
Yeah, and so our podcast is named this as partly due to Abe's influence over the community. Still, even if he's retired, we're still feeling the effects to this day.
Still looming.
Yep. Well, that's cool. So we'll go ahead and close the show out here. You can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/Spiral Series, YouTube at youtube.com/Spiral Series, and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify under Absolute Guard. To all of you watching and listening, we appreciate all of you that have liked and subscribed, and have just any comments that you have, any feedback on show content you'd like to see, let us know. Reach out to us on Twitter. It's Twitter. It's absolute_guard. So yep. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Good talking to you. Later, guys.